Ever tried reading while jogging, cooking, or even juggling flaming torches? Yeah, it doesn't end well. But with audiobooks.com, you can conquer books without the circus act. Dive into over 450,000 titles, including more than 10,000 free ones. Get hooked on a bestseller, find your next obsession, or finally read that classic you've been avoiding since high school. And here's the inside scoop. Sign up today for a free 30-day trial and snag your first 3 audiobooks on the house. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.
Okay, this is a 30-second commercial, and I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you, but please stay with me. In just 15 minutes, you could save 15% or more on car insurance. This company has been offering great rates and great service for over 75 years, and anytime you need help, you can speak to one of their trained specialists 24/7. That company is Geico. Go to geico.com today. Sorry for all the numbers, and in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm out of time.
Now, Podcast One brings you Spike's Car Radio. A downloadable cars and coffee, hosted by writer, comedian, and automotive enthusiast, Spike Ferriston. Now, here's Spike.
Welcome to Spike's Car Radio. Spike Ferriston, manufacturing fake excitement because I have a horrible cold.
Phlegm.
Here I are. And weirdly, Zuckerman, less phlegm, but I've rallied for you guys.
I'm going to keep my distance.
We've driven all the way out to Malibu. We're inside at the Malibu kitchen with our friend Bill having a nice hot cup of coffee, and we're here with John Willhoit. John Willhoit, if you don't know him, runs Willhoit Restoration. Is that what you call your place, John?
Willhoit Auto Restoration.
Willhoit Auto Restoration is down in Long Beach. This guy is the real deal. This is the guy. This is one of our insider guys, right, Zuckerman?
Absolutely.
Even predating Zuckerman before he even had cars. Jerry and I were using John Willhoit. It's hard to get a car in there because everybody wants to get a car in there. But once you get it in there and it comes out of there, it comes out perfect. This is one of the only shops where you get a car delivered and the thing is perfect. It's done. It's not like these other places.
Unless you're Zuckerman. Zuckerman always finds something.
And John, we've wanted to get you down here for an awful long time. I have a lot of listener questions. There are a lot of folks that wrote in questions. But first, why don't we just kind of take a little historical trip through your history. Where did you start doing this stuff? You grew up here in Southern California, right?
I grew up in Long Beach.
Rich kid.
Were there rich kids in Long Beach?
No.
Well, his dad had a Bentley. That's what he told me.
Yeah, my dad had either a Rolls Royce or Bentley. Yeah,
wow.
Right.
It's always when
you don't remember which it was?
Well, he had either or.
Keep it right up to your mouth.
I'm sorry.
There, yeah.
Okay, he had either or. Rolls Royce or Bentley. Sometimes he had more than one.
Did that stand out in Long Beach?
It was sometimes embarrassing. It's really a funny story, not Porsche related, but my first car was an Alfa Veloce Spider, and it was in Lakewood, which is about 3 miles away. So I went over there with my dad. We drive up in a Rolls Royce. It's white with it's sand, like a gold color with white sides.
Right.
So it's
flashy.
It's flashy. And my dad
Flashy
just liked
and
it
classy
because he liked the quality of the car. Anyway, we pull up. I negotiated a deal with the guy, $500 and a mini bike for this car. So we get over there. I ride my mini bike over to the guy's house. We get there.
What kind of mini bike was it?
It was a
monkey, a Honda monkey, or something?
It was a Frijoли.
A Frijoли,
kind of the cheaper version of the Taco.
I never even
What is that? What is the Frijoli mini bike?
The Frijoli was a kit that you would assemble.
No kidding. And you put it together?
Oh, yeah. Well, I painted it out in the in the backyard.
I want a Frijoli, Zuckerman.
It was a Frijoli. No, my dad and I had to go. We went to the Army surplus store and got an engine.
Aim it right at you like that. That's how it works.
To
That's
the
perfect.
Army surplus store and got an engine for it.
A Frijoli.
And I was a little irritated because all my buddies got Taco 22s and they had 3-horse motors.
Taco 22s.
Yeah, this was the mini bike back in the
what?
Back in the 60s.
I have not heard of any of this stuff. Have you, Zuckerman?
You guys are too young.
You too.
This reminds me of watching the Partridge Family, and they were and Danny Partridge and Keith were always getting burritos. I didn't know what those were, and now I don't know what a taco or
That's
Frijoli
right.
is.
Oh, I remember that too.
I mean, this you got to remember this was back in the 60s, so now it would. I mean,
we should revive this brand. I mean, are any of these names copyrighted?
No,
the
you
Frihole?
couldn't do it.
I mean,
You couldn't do it today. They'd have you.
it's the Frihole
in
is the
court.
bean, correct? Isn't
Yeah,
that
it's
what-
smaller than the taco. He had taco envy.
Anyway, you were saying you made
No,
this
I was
trade.
saying that we had to put mine together. My dad was always trying to pinch pennies, and
But
so
he had
everybody
rolls.
else got a Taco 22. I had this Frihole. But getting back to my story about the Alpha, we drive up in the Rolls Royce, and I'm 15 and a half. I didn't even think about how are we going to get this thing home because it had a bad clutch. So my dad pulls a chain out of the back of the Rolls Royce, and the guy, that owned the Alpha and his buddy are just kind of standing there looking at us. And we hook the chain up, and my dad says, okay, get in the car and just make sure you keep the brake on so we keep the chain tight. So that's how we got the car home. And, man, I'll tell you, if a couple times I looked, away and the chain got loose, and, man, it would just like, pow, snap,
Frihole.
But,
That's what you got.
yeah. But anyway,
When-
so
where
that's,
where do you take a detour into Porsches? Did your dad have Porsches?
when I
or-
had this Alpha, I was an avid golfer when I was a kid.
Right.
And the golf course where my parents were members, the manager had a 57 coupe. And he was always bugging me to drive my Alpha. So
And what Alpha did you have?
I had the Veloci Spider.
Veloci Spider.
59 Veloci Spider.
Wow.
Really a cool car. But anyway, so he said, I want to drive your Alpha. And I said, well, would you let me drive your Porsche? He said, oh, sure. So he took my Alpha out and slid it around corners and everything. He came back, and I was like, man, this is going to be great, And I said, now I get to drive your car. And he's like, are you nuts? I'm not going to let you drive my Porsche.
Oh, man.
And so I convinced him to at least give me a ride. And I rode in that car, and just the smell and the engine in the back and everything.
Wow.
And I was like, this is it.
And that was it.
That was what that convinced me I had to have a Porsche.
Now, am I right that you taught yourself how to restore these things? That you?
Yeah, I've always been real handy, building stuff, and I have an obsession to detail, so that's always helped. But I never learned it from anybody. I had a business degree from SC, and my last year at SC, I was looking for a summer job, so I just bought a car that somebody had, and it had been in a wreck, and I went over to Ozzie Brothers back then, and I bought a fender from him, and the guy next door to where my shop used to be, it wasn't my shop at the time, but he had a welder, and so he came over and we lined it up and helped me weld the fender on it, and I remember I put that car in the newspaper, and back then, it was the L.A. Times on Sunday was how you bought a car. And
Right.
I put the car in the newspaper, and I thought, maybe I make a few $100. And I remember I went back down to my little garage I had in Long Beach where I was working on cars. And my dad called me. He goes, "You better get home. There's like 5 people coming to look at that car."
No kidding.
Yeah, and I made back then $1,200 on the car.
Wow.
And that was
Wow.
like crazy. My
Yeah.
friends were working for $1.35 as a bartender or a waiter somewhere.
Right.
And so I was like, wow, this is fantastic. So I just kept doing it when I was in college.
What
and,
year was that?
19. Well, I graduated from college in 75. So
So
that
there
was
it
like
is.
74.
So
yeah.
you're suddenly like, now I know what I'm going to do here. I'm going to buy
Well,
these cars.
yeah.
We've heard this. We heard this almost the same story from the Roof family.
Right,
From Mr.
accidental.
Roof,
Yeah.
right? This accidental
entry.
entry and restoration, and suddenly the money, and wait a minute, there's money here. And it's amazing. There's still money there now.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
But what do you think you sold that first car for total?
I remember I sold it for $2,200.
$2,200.
And I bought it for
Most of that was-
$800. And then I invested some money
Look
in
how
it.
different
Wow.
the scale is
Yeah.
you've got from
Yeah.
that 2,200. So it was a 356.
It was. I remember it was a Pre-A, a 55 with a sunroof.
that wouldn't be an electric sunroof, right?
No, it was the old V
Goldie or whatever.
Yeah, the old Goldie sliding sunroof.
And there's no better place in Southern California to learn these Porsches, right?
Oh,
I mean,
man,
there's
they
just
were everywhere. Yeah.
Who are you going to kind of learn the trade? Did you know Vashek Polak and those guys? And
Well, when I eventually got a 4-cam, and so you had to go up to talk to Carl up at Vasek's place. And
who is that?
Carl Thompson.
Oh, okay.
He
right.
was the 4-cam guy at Vasek's.
Okay.
And you'd go in there, and everything was normal. It was like you're going up to the counter to buy parts and stuff, and you'd say, "Is Carl here?" And then they knew, like, okay, And Carl would come out from the back and say, "Carl, can you ask all these other people to leave? Because we don't want anybody to." It was like a big secret thing. And
how to work on a 4-cam.
Yeah, and Carl would say, "Oh, what part do you need?" And I'd say, "Well, I need just whatever the part was, some kind of a gear or something." And he'd say, "What car do you have?" I said, "I told you, it's a Carrera 2." And he'd say, "Well, what's the VIN number?" And because guys would go in there and try to buy stuff, and he wanted to know if they had a car, or if they were just coming in there to buy some part and then try to mark it up.
Right.
But the parts, amazingly, have gotten consistently easier to find. Back then, it was ridiculous.
Why is that engine so much harder to work on, the 4-cam? Because as I used to hear, and maybe it's wrong, that there aren't that many guys in the world who can work on these engines and get them right. That they're like these very complicated
like
watch movements. Right.
I'll tell you what it is. It really isn't that there aren't that many guys that can work on them.
Right.
There aren't that many guys that will work on them or want to work on them.
Why?
The biggest problem was always that parts weren't available.
Okay.
They are complicated because you have to set all the gear lash. And when Porsche went to the 911, they created an arbor where it was really easy to adjust cam timing.
Mm-hmm.
And on a Carrera, you have to measure the cam timing, and then you have to change the gears so that you adjust the cam timing with the gears. So you have to take the whole assembly apart, basically, reposition the gears, make sure everything's shimmed right, put it back together, and measure it again to see if you got it right. So it's very time consuming.
Wow. And why is that motor so cherished by the Porsche elites?
It wasn't, though, you told me.
No,
right?
but now. But I'm saying now.
Yeah,
why do we love these things so much?
Just because it just is really cool. I mean, it's
only
like,
cool. There's no other advantage.
Well, wait a minute, but I'll give you an example. When watches were made, they were really complicated,
right?
And Seiko came out with the quartz movement.
Yep.
And everybody thought, "Oh, these are great, man! They keep perfect time." Blah blah blah. Seiko eventually went back to making their old standard type watches because people liked the complexity of the watch.
Yeah,
and that's the same thing with the 4-cams. The fact that there aren't that many, and that they have such a cool sound, and that they're so complicated and time-consuming to work on.
So what you're essentially saying is anything that's not a 4-cam is a Seiko quartz movement.
Nah, that's
really the comparison you just made.
No,
a bunch of 356 guys just went, "Oh my God, I'm driving a Seiko.
No.
I'm driving a Seiko quartz."
If you're driving a Tesla, that's a Seiko.
That's a Seiko. All right.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more Spike's Car Radio. We're back, everybody. We're here at the Malibu Kitchen. We're with John Willhoit from Willhoit Restoration. We're with Zuckerman. It's the day before Christmas for you listening. It's the day after Christmas, or whatever you
Some
celebrate.
sort of holiday.
What do you celebrate, Zuckerman? Are you a Christmas? Are you a
I do
Kwanzaa?
everything.
Are you
I'm a Chazer, so I do.
What is a Hanukkah?
That's
What does
a
a
pig
Hanukkah
in
mean?
Yiddish. I do Hanukkah and I do Christmas and New Year's and Easter, whatever.
I don't. You don't strike me as a religious person. Have you ever even been in a synagogue?
Oh my God! I used to go to Sunday school, and I remember clearly listening to the insane stories of Abraham being spoken to by God, telling him to sacrifice his child, and burning bushes, and the rabbi had.
I meant recently, not as a child. I meant as a 50-year-old man.
No, I only had a funeral. So
there you go.
Besides funerals, the answer is no. Willhoit, tell me something. You told me there was a period that no one gave a shit about 4-cams, that they would get rid of the engines.
What they did, and this was a for some of the guys, for Vasek Polak, it was a great idea because they'd sell a car and somebody would come in with a problem. And, you think about it, the Carrera was already about 25 or 30% more than the regular car. So somebody bought this really cool Carrera. They got in there, and it was great. And after about 5,000 miles, they had some kind of issue, and so they brought it into the dealer. And the dealer gave them the bill to repair it, and they were like, "What? That's crazy. I can't pay that much." And so what Vasek did was he said, "Look, we'll take your 4-cam engine out. We'll put a brand new pushrod engine in, and we'll only charge you, what was something that was a lot less than the repair bill." And so Vasek ended up with a room full of 4-cams.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I think about occasionally. I think about like if I ever had a time machine, what would I go back and do? And I would go back. Do you remember that moment after he died? And there was that big sale, and they just opened up the warehouse. There's like 917 in there. All of these 4-cam engines. I remember talking to Jerry about it, and he was going, "Should we go down there?" And we're like, we're kind of busy. Stuff was so cheap. There were so many beautiful cars. Did you buy anything in that sale?
I did.
What did you get? What was, first of all, what was there? When you went down there and you looked around, what was there?
It wasn't. I didn't. There weren't any 4-cam parts that when I went there because
Carl we're buying license plate frames for like
around.
$2,000 a piece at this point. What was in the shop that?
Here's a weird thing that I wasn't really thinking straight, but I went down there and they had a whole bunch of brand new gears, and they had a box full of brand new second gears for 741.
Wow.
The second gear is the one that wears out the most.
Yeah.
And at the time, I thought, who needs a second gear? I mean, why would I, And I mean, I think they wanted like $50 for them. And I'm like,
I know.
What was I thinking? I remember he had a stack of aluminum door skins for 911s.
Oh.
And back in the day, you could take they'd sell you an aluminum door skin to you just glue it onto the steel frame.
Yeah.
And he had a stack of them, and I don't know what I was thinking. I thought, well, these would be fun to hang on the wall, And so I bought a pair of them, and I thought,
what else?
Now I think back, I remember I bought.
Wasn't there not 2 917 engines down there just sitting on pallets?
They had stuff like that, but you know what? That wasn't really. They weren't blowing that stuff out because. That it was already people knew stuff like that. Probably would have been cheap.
But it was only the inside guys. I mean, it was. I know it was Sam Cabiglio that called Jerry, and Jerry called me, and we even Jerry and I couldn't quite wrap our heads around what this stuff was at the time.
Right.
And parts were still kind of around. You could find stuff on eBay. It wasn't such a big deal, but there was this feeling that this thing isn't going to go any further than it was at that moment. And maybe I don't need a 917 engine for a couple $1,000.
No, we look back at one of the things that was really stupid that I thought I didn't take advantage of was he had all these little pin holders that said Vasek Polak, and it was a little pin holder.
Yeah.
And they had boxes of them.
Yeah.
And I thought, what the hell do I need those for?
You do.
Yeah, I'm not Vasek Polak. I don't,
Yep.
Well, now,
you set up a
probably
table.
Sell for like $500.
You go every February. You show up at the Lit Show and sell 10 more, and then you don't work for a year. All right, here we go. Here's some questions. Blue Corelli. Well, I'm not going to start off with your question. All right, I will.
Okay.
Where does John see the 356 market going in the next 5 to 10 years? Well, for Blue Corelli, nobody knows what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, whether we're even going to be here. Let's move on to a second question. Should the 356 be a consideration for a new Porsche collector, and why or why not? I like that question. What do you think about starting off in Porsche with your first car being a 356, and what would you recommend?
Well, that's what I did.
Right, but that was a long time ago, John.
Yeah,
you're 96.
Yeah. My first one cost $950. So, the thing about a 356 is it's a very simple car, except for, as we mentioned, the Carreras, and they're a fun car to drive. They're not a fun car to drive 140 if you could get one up that fast, but they are a fun car on mountain roads and everything. They're relatively inexpensive to repair if something goes wrong. Don't tell Zuckerman I said that. But
not according to your bills.
Yeah, right. No, but
you're right. But there's a sensation of speed.
No,
you feel like you're going 140 and you're doing 70.
Exactly.
There are, for a guy like me who doesn't wrench much, I can learn on my car and my Speedster. I'm able to actually fix some simple stuff without getting into the engine. Go ahead.
Well, here's something about the 356. I've been into this for going on 45 years. They have always gone up in value.
Right.
There haven't been any like crazy jumps and peaks, and then they went down, 30%. That's never happened to the 356. They just have kept slowly
there you go.
going up in value,
and
they've been a good investment.
Market. And Willhoit is
this market is already whipped, Zuckerman, but he's right. If you think about it, I've had my car for 20 years, and it goes up and then it drops down a little, but then it continues its climb. It doesn't have that Ferrari drop.
And what people have to understand, A, it's got vintage charm, but B, it has usability. You can use that car. If you got into a 1960 Cadillac, you'd be driving a bucket of bolts. It would kill you. It would wear you out, and
it wouldn't be safe at all.
And the 356, you say, my God, this is so far ahead of its time. It's still a valid car to drive around today. You could, in theory, in California, use it. As a daily
here's another
driver.
question. I like this question a lot because it goes to the insanity of the car guy and the frustration. And I actually don't know the answer to this. Maybe you do. This is from Jim Wiggy. My dad had a 58 356A in Amsterdam and a 60 356B, which he brought to the U.S., but let them get away before I was born. I have the engine and chassis numbers of those cars. How would you go? He's shaking his head. But we hear this a lot. I've even done this myself. I've been looking for the original engine for my Speedster. How do you find these cars if you have engine numbers, chassis numbers, or VIN numbers? What's the best resource? Do you have one?
Well, if you have a Ouija board, no.
Just start Googling, right?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, now is the easiest. I mean, it's easier now than it would ever be just because of the internet and everything.
Right.
But, that's really a long shot. I mean, they made a lot of cars, and there's no database where you can look up engines and match them to cars. I mean, you can get that information.
When you're inspecting a car, how do you find out if it's a matching number engine?
You have to get the information from Porsche.
Yeah, and how do you do that? Who are you calling? The factory in Germany, or are you calling the dealers?
You can't do that anymore. Now you have to get a certificate of authenticity.
So you have to wait for that to come in. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
be able to call the factory.
In the old days,
hello.
Seriously, in the old days, you could call or you could send them a fax. Back when faxes started.
Yeah.
Before that, it would be a telefax. And you'd write to them, and they'd write you back.
Oh, that's great.
And give you all the information. They would do it, in letter form, too, before faxes came around. You could write them a letter, and they'd write you back.
And now they don't want to do it anymore.
Well, they want to do it. They want to charge you.
You have to be careful because I have a standing search that I put on a bunch of sites and on eBay Motors for my engine, and I was contacted by the Reverend Peevler, who claimed to have my engine in North Carolina. And just Google my name, Spike Ferriston, Reverend Peevler, and Jalopnik, and you can read the little saga that ensued after I realized the guy did not have my engine and was just trying to extort me, and our back and forth that went on for many months. But that, eBay is a pretty good resource to find pieces of your engines and cars, and then Googling.
And the registries.
Googling every year. I mean, I had a 993 C2S that was stolen, and then I sold it to James Spader. It was stolen again, and he and I both want that car back. It's disappeared. But every couple of years, I'll take an hour and try to find it on the internet.
It's amazing to think back in the 90s how many of those cars were stolen.
Yeah.
That was
car
a big deal.
Was a one of one dark blue, I believe, that Dr. Wiedekind, he wrote me a nice little letter, and yeah, I shouldn't have sold that. That was a mistake. Given the price of 60s, 911s, even 912s, R356 is the new bargain. I don't know about that. Seems that the generation that listed after them in the day are moving on, and the newer generation prefer cars with more power and air conditioning. I don't think so. Let's skip that question. What's the most hours that you have put into a single restoration? Ooh, I love that. That comes from Cup Classics
I could tell
in
you.
New Zealand.
We're not done with Zuckerman's car yet, so.
Well,
I love when he says to me, I didn't know it would take this long. Well, wait, if you don't know how long it's going to take.
Now, when you say Zuckerman's car, nobody knows what we're talking about here. Are we talking about the 58 Speedster that he crashed?
That I didn't. Yes, that I crashed.
Speedster, yeah.
In theory, you
Speedster.
crashed it.
In theory. That's like in theory he's related to the other Will.
That is, and there were a lot of listener questions about it. Everybody does want an update on the car and to know where we're at. So why don't you give us an update on where the car's at?
Okay. Zuckerman's car, the damage was not bad. It wasn't nearly as bad as it looked. We saved all the original metal, worked it back into shape. The car looks fantastic now. In doing the repairs, we kept taking it one step further, and we found some like previous repairs. I don't know when the car was restored. Maybe
Pino did that car in the 90s, and I think
the paint artist.
Yeah, and you think
great.
you see that. I think the quality of restorations was not what you would do.
It's not the same because there's a lot of things under the car that we found, like rusted areas and stuff. That when we took the undercoat off. Originally, we weren't going to take the undercoat off, and then, as you dig deeper into it, because you gave me the directive, you want the car to be perfect.
I said full Willhoit.
Yes.
Now, when
is that like full Monty Zuckerman?
When Pino did this car, say 20 years ago, were you doing Pino quality restorations? Has there been an evolution across the board of the way things are done?
We were doing. I mean, I was doing really nice stuff. I mean, you can look at like the Carrera 2 that Leno has, and it's not been re-restored. It looks just like it did when we did it.
When did you do that car?
I did that car back in '76.
That car was on Leno's Garage. If you guys want to check it out, you can
restoration.
That car's on Leno's Garage. If you want to check it out, and you can check it out on YouTube and watch that video. I watched it last night. It's fantastic, and it really, highlights your work and how well you do. And that's Leno's personal car.
It's his personal car, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I went with him to look at it, and he asked me, should I buy it? I said, well, if you don't buy it, I'd like to buy it. You know
what struck me about the video? He had a cold when he was shooting it. He sounds like me today, Zuckerman.
Well.
If you play it, he sounds exactly like me. Well, wait. Now, did we answer the question, what is the longest and most amount of hours you put into a car?
I think we've had a couple of cars that we've spent close to 5,000 hours.
Holy shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
At those shop rates? Why bother committing fraud?
He goes right to the money. Now, wait a minute. But what condition did this car come to you? Was it just a rusted bucket of nothing?
Well, the car I'm thinking was a car that we did for a good customer of mine, and it was a 58 coupe, and it had one of the first electric sunroofs, and it was an Outlaw. And I don't typically build Outlaws. I mean, now an Outlaw is any car that has some trick wheels on it.
Right.
And this was a real Outlaw. We widened the rear of the body so we could put 7-inch wheels on it, but we had to replace almost every inch of the body on this car. I mean, it just turned out to be way worse than we thought.
Wow.
So the body work ended up, plus having to make new fenders and everything, the body work was probably $150 or something, So the body work was a lot of it, and then when you start adding in, there was a bunch of other just really trick.
Does
little
the owner
details.
still have the car?
He actually sold it, and I think it's in Germany now.
Wow,
and
that is wild.
Yeah, I've never heard from the guy that bought it,
or you heard from the client again.
Yeah, but it was, his comment. It was in excellence one time, and his comment was, I didn't have a budget, and we still went over it.
All right, someone really wants to geek out here on Porch. Scott Bartmess. Nobody uses that. Why doesn't anybody use their real name? It's not hard. You don't have to make up a clever name. And it would help you in this moment, because then I would say your name, and you would go, oh, that's me. Anyway, John, who do you recommend for steering box rebuilds? That's a really good question. And do you think Porsche Classic will make these items part of their catalog someday?
Well, to answer the first part, the best thing you can do right now is to take apart the steering box and see what you have.
Right.
The bearings are available. If the bearings have worn out and kind of dug into the actual race, the race was cast into the housing. So in order to replace the complete bearing, to replace the complete bearing, you have to cut the old races out and fit complete bearings in it. That's possible to do. The worm gear, those you can kind of get by with. You can buy the pin and the bearings to replace the pin. That's the part that rotates on the worm.
Well, this fella may not be able to do that work.
Then what you need to do is call Zims. Because Zims Auto Technic, they've been rebuilding
and they're here
steering
in
boxes.
LA?
Yeah, no, they're in Texas.
They're in Texas. So what you do is you pull it and you ship it off to them.
Yeah, you can send them to them and they'll do them. And what they do is they have a collection of steering boxes and they'll take good parts and put them together and try to make a box.
You know,
works.
Years ago, I was talking to a mutual friend of ours who was telling me, always make sure your steering box is safe. Because when it goes, and it's a very dangerous situation. It just, the wheels will just suddenly turn and you'll flip it. Is that true in any way?
I've never heard of that.
Do you remember hearing that?
No, I don't remember.
No,
Okay,
it wouldn't go fast.
It wouldn't.
Anything with a steering box would be like, it would progressively get harder and harder to steer.
So you'd have play in the steering wheel.
Yeah, you'd know way ahead
Thank
of time.
God.
And
Every
to get
time
back
I get
to
up my car
the
over
second
100,
part of that last question, if Porsche would ever, it would be great if they would build the rebuild kits.
Yeah.
Because ZF used to offer a rebuild kit, and if Porsche Classic would step up and do that, it'd be great.
Their interest is selling new cars, not really old cars.
I know.
I agree. They're missing out on a lot of cash. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Spike's Car Radio. 60 seconds. That's exactly how long this commercial lasts. You know what else you can do in about a minute? Get an offer with your car from TrueCar. That's right. In the amount of time it takes to floss your teeth, pet your dog, do a few sit-ups, just listen to my voice, you can get a true cash offer. Best of all, you can do it from your smartphone or at home. Just go to TrueCar, simply enter your license plate number, and watch how your car's details pop up. Answer a few questions, and you'll get an accurate true cash offer from local TrueCar certified dealer. It's that easy. After that, you can bring your car in and they'll check it out with you together, the two of you. You can even hug if you want. You can ask questions, get the answers you need, so there's no surprises, then simply leave your check or trade in your car for a new ride. So when you're ready to experience a new, better way to sell or trade in your car, check out TrueCar today.
You're listening to Spike's Car Radio.
All right, we're back. Spike's Car Radio. I'm reading here in Classic Driver that your ultimate dream car would be a 59 365 GT Speedster.
356, you mean?
Yes.
I know. They wrote 365.
Okay. Well,
that's what I'm saying. I'm reading
I don't know. Is that a Ferrari or something?
Why would Classic Driver write a 365 GT Speedster? But yes, it's the 356 Speedster. You owned one at one point.
No, Carrere GT.
Yeah, they made 20 some odd in 59.
Did you have one?
I did. And I'm embarrassed
and there were
to
20
tell you
of
what
these made.
They made them. I think they made 49 or 50 of them at the end.
Really?
Right at the end, and they were all GTs.
Wow.
What do you think of those cars?
It's it's a bitchin' car. I'm going to build one because I there's no way I'm going to.
Well, that's what it says right here. Your plan is to build an exact replica with a 904 engine. That I have.
Yeah, I'm ready right now to do it. I mean, if I can just get Zuckerman's car done, then I'll have some time.
So a 904 engine?
Wow.
Yeah.
How do those things run?
You know, honestly, they're nice. I mean, it's a nice engine. It's
got some torque,
but yeah, they have good torque. Not like the 2.2s that we build now, but they're a high revving motor. They had different camshafts in them. You have to have the street cams because if you run the 3-dot cams that they ran in those, the car doesn't even start until $5,000. You couldn't drive it on the street hardly. But yeah, and the GT Speedster had aluminum panels, aluminum deck lid, aluminum hood. It had all the lightweight stuff. I had one that I mean, I'd always wanted one. I shouldn't even tell you. I bought it for $325, and a year later, I was building a new building down at my shop, and somebody offered me $450 for it, and I at the time needed some money to fund the building, and I thought, whatever, I'll sell it. Now
$2 million.
I saw the same car my car in Germany. And the guy was asking like $2.5 million.
Yeah, that's about right.
And the crazy thing, talking about finding your original engine.
Yeah,
I went up to Stan Gold's to look at a car that was for sale. That was a GT Speedster, and I remember my engine in that car, which I didn't have. I had an engine, but I didn't have the original one. And I remembered it because it was 007 were the last 3 digits. And I went up there to inspect a GT Speedster at Stan Gold's, and I look in the engine compartment, and it's my engine from the car that I had.
Oh, my God.
That I had sold to a guy in Germany. And I called him, and I said, hey, I don't know how we could make this deal happen, but I found the original engine.
No kidding.
And he said, I don't really care about that. I'm like, what?
I don't care. Speaking of 007, people are asking for an update on the Zagato Speedster. The Zagato Coupe that we have coming.
It's beautiful.
And Ben Clymer's car. Our Zagato is 007, by the way. It is the 007 car. The ETA on our car is early February. It's almost done. We've been getting pictures from Milan. It's beautiful. They're about to attach. It's not going to
Early
be
February of 2020?
What's that?
2020 or 2019?
No. We're almost done.
I'm
You've
going
seen the
2020.
pictures. You and I have to go and drive it. I think we should you should, in your head, save the date. Some second week of February. Let's go to Milan and drive this thing and sort it. We'll have fun.
Why not?
We'll stay in an Italian hotel.
And we'll do that, and then we will get it when it finally comes. I'm sure it'll end up at John's shop for some fettling.
Yeah, we'll fettle as much as we can there, and then we'll send it down to John. Clymer's car has to be delivered by this point, because I know that the only one that they're in their building right now is ours. We were the last, and here was our thinking, and it was really Jerry's idea that even if we're not going to get the last number, which was car number 9, we want to be the last build so they can learn on the first 8 cars and then have our car. They've made all their mistakes by then, right? That was the thinking.
Do you think that's true, John? They get better as they make them?
Yeah,
you getting better?
Want to get them out of the shop.
Yeah, that's true.
Can
That's
happen
true.
too.
But the car is beautiful, and we could not be more excited. Scott Bartmess, did we already talk to?
Yes.
Yeah, we did. We did, Scott. The Speedster repair we did. I recently acquired, this is from Endo 911 RS. Must have endometriosis or
Endometriosis.
endometriosis. I recently acquired a coupe with a 911 motor and transmission, converting it. Now, what is he saying?
A 356
Yeah, he
coupe.
doesn't say that, but it must be a 356. Converting it back is cost prohibitive and a big part of the car's history. I want to continue with the theme, but handle the execution better. Does Willhoit have any tips to move the drivetrain forward as much as possible? Any experience with lengthening the wheelbase for better weight balance?
You know, I think that is a car you need to take over to Rod Emery.
Right.
Or call him.
Would you ever lengthen the wheelbase of a 356?
No.
But have you put a 911 engine in a 356?
No.
You've done
No.
other things
You buy a
like
911.
fuel injection, right?
We've done fuel injection. I have a real thing that I think the car should stay a 356.
Right. Me too.
So, I mean, if you want the experience of, the 911 rear suspension, and buy a 911.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not
Now,
dissing the guys
Let's
that do
just
that,
back
but-
up, because a lot of folks, we all know who you are. A lot of folks, will not. This will be the first time they're hearing about you. You make a very special 356 engine, right? You've had several generations of them.
I have.
And I have one.
You do,
in
yes.
my Speedster.
Mhm.
And it is incredible. I think I have 150 horsepower now in a 58 Speedster. I sent the car down to you, and we kept everything else stock. It still feels like an old 356 Speedster,
Sure.
but man, does this thing blast off. What's the engine you offer now at your shop?
The one we're doing right now is I call it a 2.2 liter. It's actually a 2185. What I do, and this is when I started doing these bigger engines. This has been about a dozen years or more. I have a special crank built, special rods built, special pistons, cylinders. We have our own valve kit for the heads, and all the porting has all been figured out. Everything has been dialed in, so we can build these engines, and it's a really reliable, like it's got power where you drive.
Yeah.
It's not like you got to rev the thing to 7,500 RPM. And you can putt around town, and that's probably the way your engine
I'm
is.
in love with this car now. I am in love with this engine.
So it's like taking your engine and adding more torque and
Don't I have a
horsepower.
generation back?
Yours was a 1925cc, I think.
Right, exactly.
Which was, those made about 145 around that,
Yeah.
But not quite as much torque because the new engine makes 160 and 160.
Oh my God, that's insane! But I'm probably, I think, because I never had the stock motor in there. I think I had a motor from 1960, if I recall. So I'm probably making 68 horsepower, 75 horsepower. So the jump was
if you're lucky,
incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember the first thing I asked you, I said, just make sure the brakes work because I want them. I don't want to switch. I don't want to do disc brakes. I want the drum brakes. But I know I'm going to be anticipating stops. Just make sure they stop straight.
Well, I remember there were a few. We did a few. I mean, we made sure everything was in good shape.
Oh my!
In your
and
car.
I jam in this car. I love it, and Zuckerman can attest. I have no problem taking it out on drives, keeping up with anything that he or Jerry are in. Modern. This thing just blasts.
It was the same engine in the Stone Gray Speedster, I believe. That had a 1920.
That was the next generation. That was a 2002cc engine.
That had gobs of torque.
Yeah.
If you could come from a stoplight in second, no problem.
Oh yeah.
No engine pulled. No engine.
Yeah. I want in a Speedster. It's like you're in a go-kart.
Now these motors. If someone has a 356 out there and wants to buy one, you have just pallets of these things laying around. You can call you up and just put one in. How does it work? You just ship them off?
No, right now, I'm out of crankshafts. I've never advertised these engines, but they just went crazy.
Of course.
Once some people, once it got around with the internet and everything,
right?
And right now, I have one crank left, and then no more crankshafts until April.
Wow.
And I'm stuck going.
How do we get more cranks?
Well, the problem is the jump is. You talk to somebody and you want to make 20 cranks, and they're like, wow, that's a lot of cranks. The next guy, you go to a real big crank manufacturer and you say, I'd like to make 40 cranks. And they're like, 40,000?
It's not enough cranks.
Yeah, no, they don't.
Zuckerman, we should build 40,000 cranks and make 40,000 motors and start selling motors.
I'd buy them from you guys, yeah.
Yeah. This is your opportunity, Zuckerman.
To get into
Forget
the
about
into
last
the car
week in
business.
Tommy Kendall and gambling on NASCAR.
Right.
This is a legitimate business. We build 40,000 Willhoit motors and we spread them around the world.
That's
Think
too
about
many.
that. Think of
That's too many.
Well, maybe you could use them for like industrial generators and
Right.
stuff like that. They could be everywhere.
What potential? I love this question, and I've had a lot of people talk about it privately, but no one really likes to comment on it publicly. But we're going to throw it out to you anyways. What potential client characteristic would make John Willhoit say no thanks to the business? Is there a customer?
He's going to make fun of me
I'm
again.
working for Zuckerman. So.
Zuckerman is a very reasonable guy.
Paul is a fantastic
He is,
customer.
and
He is.
he's like me. We like to be tapped on the shoulder and get we're not sitting waiting for restorations. We're like, call us when you're ready. It's great.
I'll tell you
What customer don't you like to work with?
Well, let me just tell you first, in my shop, because I have a good group of guys, very devoted. My shop manager, Chris Mayring, and parts manager, Mike Johnson. Without those guys, I couldn't do it. And the other guys as well. But the dream customer for us is a customer who wants to be involved.
Right.
They like to look at the pictures. They call and want to know how the car is doing. I can interact with that. I mean, it seems weird, but my guys will say, "Hey, what did Zuckerman think of that 911
wow.
when he got it?"
They take pride.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
serious.
great. That's great.
All of us, you'd be really surprised how emotional it is for us. Like,
Yeah.
when we get done with the car, we want to know that the customer likes it, and it's like we're giving birth. But the worst customer, and I've had a few of these guys, are guys that they aren't involved. They'll have their guy, contact me, and I've done some jobs like that for guys that I never met them. I've never met them in person,
and you never hear again.
And I never hear anything after that. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying the work's the work. I love to have work,
but feedback's important.
But it is. I mean,
yeah.
I do this because I love to do it. I mean, if I didn't need to make a living, I'd still be doing it.
Today I drove up the 83 SC, and it blew. I still can't. We called you from one of the shows a few shows back to ask you if this was how they made the cars, or this is your magic. And I can't believe this car has Willhoit magic.
Yeah,
It is so good.
The 83. After I talked to you, I forgot about this completely, but the 83 was a different engine than the 82 and earlier. In 83, what Porsche did was they raised the compression ratio, and they went to premium fuel. That was a big step in 1983 for them. But the cars made like another 27 horsepower or something. It was a big jump.
That car
so
drives
they
well.
have better throttle response than the earlier SCs, but there may still be an element of
It's
magic
just so
in there.
well put together. There's no squeaks. Even for a convertible, you think you'd have body flex. That thing really handles.
No, it's a good car. And it's got over 100,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? For a regular 356, what's your favorite 356? That's probably again the entry point for someone. What are we looking at? I like this. It's for me. It's somewhere in the mid 60, like early 60s, like a 64, 63. What? A B, right?
Well, some people like Bs. Jerry is a fan of Bs.
I'm just saying, just for the
fun.
guy who's just starting out, what's the best all-around 356 to start on?
I mean, it sounds stupid, but the best one is the last version they made, the C.
Yeah.
The brakes are, you just kind of forget about them. When they run right, they're good.
The 65s.
Yeah, 64.5 car.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just don't understand, like with drum brakes, you kind of have to constantly monitor the brakes, make sure they get adjusted whenever you change the oil and stuff like that. And, a lot of people...
I haven't touched those brakes since you delivered that car, John.
Yeah,
Oops.
well, I may be repairing your car soon.
I have an interesting
can't
little
stop.
ding. I wasn't feeling well, so I didn't drive the car today, but... I'm getting an interesting little dinging sound. Something's loose in there when I'm rolling slowly and the transmission's engaged. And it's ding, 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 ding. It's a little
loose screw.
Little dingy.
Like, sounds like a loose
dingy,
screw.
Yeah, it's a little loose screw.
So wait, when you're driving at a low speed,
yeah. It's interesting. It's not when it's idling. It's when I put the car in first gear and then maybe roll 5-8 miles an hour that I can hear it. I'm sure it's there the whole time I'm driving, but there's just a little bit of a ding.
I mean, it may be something in the transmission.
Yeah.
Sometimes the gears kind of, rattle.
It sounds like it's on the outside of the car somewhere. Me, I'm just going to drive it till it stops, and then I'll send it down to your shop.
You've gotten so much use out of that car.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. 20 years of use, Zuckerman. In Hollywood, out of Hollywood. Different paint, different bumpers, different engines. I love that thing.
That's the best thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best thing.
Yeah. Mark Pribinik. Today, gentlemen, Saturday is the 356th day of the year. 356.
That's funny.
Hope everyone gets out for a spin in there. 356. Isn't that great? Now I'm going to have to drive mine. With that being said, what did you all drive to the podcast? We just covered that. Hopefully, Willhoit drove that green patina monster he brought to Luft 5. What is he talking about? What car is he talking about?
You sold that.
No. I still have it. I have a 58 Speedster. I call it Torino Green. It's an old 60s paint job. It's got a lot of patina, but it probably would have made it up here, but I don't know if I'd be as much fun on the talk.
What did you drive up here?
I'm a terrible club member. I drove my Tahoe.
Yeah.
But my wife's got me on a Christmas, errand.
She ruined it.
I can't
gotta
think
pick
of
up a bunch of
a better car for you than that Tahoe. You look like you'd be, behind the bar of a Western that the Coen brothers directed.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, right.
He looks like the dude.
Right.
I'm in my Tahoe.
He's the dude. He is.
Well, look, we really appreciate you
But
driving
before
up
we
here.
get off,
Zuckerman,
before
please,
we have
what do you
to
got?
stop.
What do you
we
got?
have to end with the arc that I think, is it true? Porsche Classic is now sending their guys to you
You're exactly
to figure
right.
out how to fix these cars. Is that how
Did
it's
that
done?
happen?
Is that true?
No, it actually the two of the guys, Alex Fabig and the other guy is Uwe Makrutsky.
You made that up.
No, yeah, those are made up names. No, those are the two main guys at Porsche Classic. They actually came to my shop. Interestingly enough, I was in Germany when they came to my shop. So my parts guy, Mike, showed them around. And I talked to him after they were here. And Alex said, wow, I'm glad we don't have to compete with you guys.
Wow.
And I said, well, that makes me feel good.
What a nice compliment.
But I hear from them a lot. One of the things that Alex asked me after he was in charge for about a year, he said, how long does it take you guys to restore a car? And I said, a couple of years. And he said, oh, I'm glad to hear that. Because that's the biggest problem we have is people expect that we can do the cars in 6 months. And I said, no, you can tell them that I said it takes a couple of years.
When you're restoring a car and let's say it's a mess, what's the one part of it that takes the longest?
Metalwork.
The metalwork.
Yeah.
It's always the metalwork.
Always.
Do you really? You told me once that when after the metalwork, when you're getting the car ready to paint, you're looking at the car with a magnifying glass. Were you exaggerating?
When my guys prep the body, literally, I mean, they have their glasses on and they're using like little burnish wheels, and we go over every square inch of the body to make sure it's clean.
Wow.
Everything gets spot blasted so that when the primer goes on there, it's perfectly clean metal. Because that's
what you see.
That's what you have to do. That's what's going to make it last. You don't want primer to not stick. That's the biggest problem.
Wow.
There you go.
And, of course, he is not related to the alleged thief, Willhoit. We have to end with that. There is another Willhoit out there. If you
Zuckerman,
Google...
your memory is perfect this morning, and mine is clouded. You're
But
right.
if you Google Willhoit, he is not the alleged
Now, what you
thief.
just dropped on the table is there is a dealer who sells 993s in Ohio, Willhoit Enterprises. I've been a fan of this dealership forever.
Yeah, good cars.
Beautiful cars. He's in a little bit of trouble. And I've always, in the very beginning of my Porsche life, I always confused the two of you guys.
Well, it's not a common name.
Yeah.
It's not a common name,
it
and yet,
isn't.
but that you're two very different people who aren't
Well,
related.
there was a time that John over here would tell me that was his relative. Now
Yeah,
now
now
he
he's
says
saying
he
no,
never
he's not.
said
I
that.
said we were distant cousins, but now
And that Willhoit I
Is
guess
allegedly.
is allegedly in trouble with some banking and some multiple
Fraud.
titles.
But I
and
have kind of a
cars.
tie-in to you, Zuckerman. from
Okay,
him.
tie it in. Tie the
He
fraud back.
actually, when I bought the 2009 black turbo with
Yes.
a red interior, the one that you gave to your partner who
Who
gave to
wrecked
somebody
it.
who wrecked it, I actually called Michael back in Springfield because the guy that had it was his neighbor. And so he said, it's a fantastic car, you should buy it. And that's how I got that black turbo.
Wow.
So,
That was there were so few 2009 manual transmission turbos.
No, that
it's
was-
just such a handful.
That
of
was terrible.
That was a bitching car, and then it got wrecked and it got destroyed. And then there was a guy at a body shop. The whole front end was taken off this car, Spike, and the guy who had wrecked the car came to me and said, I went to a body shop and they said they could fix it like new. And I said, I tell you what,
sure.
you go and buy it from me and you have it fixed like new and drive it over 70. Be my guest.
That's like what someone once said.
Spicoli.
I'm writing a movie about this Porsche 356, so the movie studio is going to restore it. And I
Yeah.
said, who?
Oh, yeah,
They go,
that
New
sounds
Line
good.
Cinema.
Yeah,
New
they're
Line.
well
I didn't know
known.
they had a restoration department for cars. They do. They're going to make it good. Anyway, gentlemen. Happy
Thank you,
holidays
John.
to both of you. John, thank you
Thank
for
you.
driving
Thanks
up
for
here.
having me. I'm flattered.
To all of you, have a safe holiday week. of fun. Get in your cars.
May
and drive.
under your tree be a frijole or a taco.
Enjoy those peanut M&Ms, and we're going to revive these old mini bike brands. Yeah, and we'll see you next week
on WR engines.
There you go.
And we'll see you next week on Spike's Car Radio.
Thanks for listening to Spike's Car Radio. Download new episodes every Wednesday on the Podcast One app or subscribe now at Apple Podcasts or PodcastOne.com.
Podcast One Sports is your home for the Underdog Sports Network. Join Chris Horwoodell and friends each week as they cover the biggest stories in sports with shows like Tales from the Association, the Underdog Sports NFL Show, and You're Wrong and Here's Why.
You can't rely on draft picks a lot of times with quarterbacks. There's 4 to 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first round that are complete busts.
Check out all these exciting shows on the Underdog Sports Network every week on Podcast One or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
You love podcasts, the stories, the laughs, the unexpected turns. But when this episode ends, the silence starts. Not anymore. Audiobooks.com turns that silence into your next great adventure. With over 450,000 titles, from bestsellers to hidden gems, your love for listening just found its new best friend. And because you already know the joy of audio, we're giving you 3 free audiobooks to start your journey. Imagine your favorite podcast, now with unlimited episodes. That's audiobooks.com. Keep the story going. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. Because for podcast lovers like you, the end of an episode is just the beginning. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.